evening and welcome to Dark Hour Paranormal. I am your host, Michael Roser. And this evening, folks, we're going to delve into a topic that certainly encompasses the entire planet. But there are localized areas of activity in way of paranormal, UFOs, cryptozoology, and others that certainly need to be revisited and cannot be put on the back burner. Now, there are many of us in the Northeast who are familiar with at least 3 or 4 of these purported triangles or triangular figures in way of this activity. But how far does this actually extend? Well, I have my good friend Frapsap, otherwise known as Robert Rivas. Probably should have done that the other way around. But nonetheless, I do have Robert Rivas in the studio tonight to discuss this topic at large, and also we're going to go over some of the ideas that he and I are putting together, or at least surmising in way of what comes from the documentary that we are going to be putting together. And yes, he is on board with me with this, and he'll be working by my side in a partnership to do this documentary, whether he realizes it or not. He does now. He knows now. So with all of this in mind and without the further ados, folks, I'm going to bring Frapsap on, and I'm going to try to continue to say his real birth name because, I think that's only respectful. But you know this guy. He's a fantastic man. He's been in many of our other shows. He accompanied us out to Stonehenge with Jared Murphy and myself. Guys, if you don't know him, you will tonight. I'd like to introduce to you and revisit Robert Rivas. What's up, my friend? Great to see you again. You're looking fantastic, by the way.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Michael. It's good to see you. It's good to
likewise.
Be here.
Yeah. I mean, look at this. I mean, we talked about this a little bit before the show. Your lighting is beautiful. We get that background. You know what I mean? I know where you live, too. So, I mean, there's an idea of some of that old construct there with the brick wall. Yeah, I'm reading a little bit into this. But, man, you look fantastic. Right. Thanks for joining us tonight. So, as you know, we are going to be talking about these triangles all over the world that, again, hold purported paranormal activity and others around that particular domain, if you will. Let me start off with this, okay? So the figure, a triangle, okay, the geometry to this, at least in way of sacred geometry, is supposed to represent balance, okay? Mind, body, spirit, to say the least. And yet we're seeing what appears to be disturbances or the inverse of what you would expect to experience, with this particular shape. What are your thoughts, preliminary here, what are your thoughts on this being what's been marked out by certain people in way of, I'm sorry, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but the way that people got these triangular figures, by the way, at least in all cases except the one that I'll mention a little bit later, is that they went and mapped out all of the activity that had been witnessed or observed or reported, and then, sure enough, they were able to find that there was some sort of triangular perimeter around all of this, and that's where we get the triangle figure. So,
Absolutely.
My question to you, in way of what you believe, in your opinion, your research, why the triangular figure? Why not a square? Why not a circle? Why not something else elementary in the way of sacred geometry?
Well, in some cases, I agree with you. I think it could just as easily be seen as, or called, a circle on a map. But when you're triangulating, you're taking into consideration different reference points to start out with, and that's where you get the triangle. In a lot of cases, these mysterious places with the phenomena located in the so-called triangle is not really an equilateral triangle in the exact dimensional, geometrical sense of a triangle. It's more of elongated, maybe triangle with different cities at the at the corners of where they might be, some of the bigger known cities or something, and maybe that's why it would be called that. But I think you'd have to do the research to find out if it really is part of the deal. It may not have anything to do whatsoever with it, or it might in some of the other cases. Because you've got 3 very powerful walls to an invisible triangle that could be force walls of some power that is not understood, like in the Bermuda Triangle, is pretty much seems to be only in certain areas within that location, and then outside there doesn't seem to be as many reports of missing boats or missing planes or UFO sightings or any phenomena as much as it's concentrated within the focal point between the Bahamas and maybe, the coast of South Carolina or the coast of Florida, and straight up, into the Atlantic Ocean somewhere, some indeterminate place, maybe not even an island or anything. But you bring up all these other triangles around the world. I think there's got to be a different explanation, but it just sort of is convenient to call it that and to fall under there. But if you looked at the map, you could just erase the triangle and put a circle and just, narrow it down that way to the radius of it. But it's a cool way to kind of identify it, since there's other, paranormal phenomena going on in these locations with the Bermuda Triangle, to try to kind of make it a unified kind of a theory, kind of.
Make it congeal, at least in way of visual, something that we can sink our left brain into and sort of logic, or rationalize, I should say. I totally agree with that in many ways. And I wonder, too, because, again, the way that this is mapped out is, okay, let's say the central point of the triangle, wherever it is, that's where you're getting most of the purported activity, and then it expands, radiates outward from the center. Perhaps they're just encapsulating this, but I wonder if, okay, so we're seeing a two-dimensional representation of this triangle. Within that activity, as you go closer to the center of this figure, if that could be represented in some sort of logarithmic scale that actually moves vertically, and if you were able to do that, and of course we can certainly talk about this, I'm just kind of coming up with this at the moment here.
Yeah.
We could look at this perhaps as a tetrahedron, rather than just a two-dimensional triangle. And if that's the case, okay, if we understand the core fundamentals of sacred geometry and the Merkaba, wherein you can rotate these and you create openings in way of portals, you draw in energy from different dimensions through the different apexes, maybe there's an element there. I've often had the thought that perhaps these spaces are inherently fourth dimensional, or fifth dimensional in certain respects. People call them portals, they say vortexes. Sure, I think these are elementary ways to explain what might actually be present. But again, especially moving, in the way of where our planet is going and everybody else in way of consciousness, and we talk about this a lot. Of course, the awareness raising and the vibration going with the planet. I wonder if some of these spaces are just being more apparent to us because of that. But at the same time, you take some of these triangles, and most of the activity happened in the 40s and the 50s, maybe in the 70s and a little bit in the 80s, and then nothing.
There were spikes. Yeah. Oh, I hear what you're saying, and believe me, I agree. I think that's what it seems like it is too, to me. And you mentioned the portals again. Portals is as you know, part of something I've been studying for many years. These vortexes that are interdimensional in nature, that sometimes cross over with our, mundane reality, and you have what Carlos Castaneda might call a non-ordinary reality in these locations, or Don Juan may call it that. And I think what you're seeing similar type of phenomena in these triangles. So, I mean, that explanation, it's a very logical deduction to reach a very, and I won't say conclusion, because it's up to trial and error and scientific inquiry and investigation, which is what we plan to do, boots on the ground, to see if what holds to the test. And can we discover, I won't say we can discover what's at the root cause of it all, but you never know, maybe we can in some cases determine why this is happening, or maybe capture something incredible going out there ourselves. And I think that's going to be the blessing. That's going to be really the enjoyment and the fun, is actually going to a place that's reputed. I mean, it would be terrible to go there with these high expectations and come away and say, oh, we went to the biggest hotspot in the world, we got nothing, we came home. No, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to get some tremendous I don't know what we're going to get, but I think something powerful is there. I don't think it's called that for no reason. And I think that since you see the same type of phenomena at these triangles, that it may have some connection with an interdimensional vortex or a force field that connects these places together. We were talking about the Bermuda Triangle, which is also known as the Devil's Triangle. But it's not the only Devil's Triangle, and you hear that a lot, Devil's Triangle. But it gives it an air of, foreboding, someplace you don't want to go. But guys like you and me, we rush into these triangles, looking for whatever we can find. But we got to go prepared, and we're going to, believe me, go prepared. Because when I found out that you were interested in exploring the triangle in Massachusetts, the Bridgewater Triangle, I said, yeah, I'm on board. I want to go. And I wasted no time in starting to collect some instruments, some sensitive equipment that we can bring out there and run some scientific experiments and try to collect as much data as we can. And so
I think that's fantastic. You're by the way, I'm getting a little echo there on your end.
Are you getting a little echo?
Yep.
Okay.
I think it's fantastic that you're so on board with this and that you've, made the effort to gather some of these scientific instruments, because that's something that we still got a little echo. That's something we simply cannot ignore when it comes to doing this type of work. As much as I like to just walk into a location, use my body as that instrumentation, there's very little that I can provide somebody in way of anecdotal experience and give them hard evidence unless I have a piece of something or I've got a big gash in my arm that looks like it wasn't, made naturally in any sort of accident, whatever the case may be. It's very hard to push that out there. Now, you mentioned, you're going into some of these places and, more than likely coming out with something, even if it's experience. There's a triangle out in Scotland called the Falkirk Triangle, which has been considered by some to be the UFO capital of the world, with over 300 sightings in this location every single year. Now, the curious thing about this particular location is that the legends that surround it, the indigenous cultures that have their legends about this place, really correlate with what experiences were happening currently. And some have surmised that the ancient people were actually seeing extraterrestrials of various sizes back in their days and calling them an elemental, a fairy, a gnome, you name it, anything in that elemental domain. They just maybe didn't understand what they were seeing. Again, some of these extraterrestrials appear to be very small, some of them very large. The Dover Demon, if you recall, was speculated to be some sort of extraterrestrial, and that thing was about knee height, maybe a little bit higher, but that was it. So for somebody who was unversed,
the description, all right. Yeah.
For someone who was unversed,
a little imp. Yeah. That sounds like an alien. It could be interchangeable. Like think about the goblins of Kentucky, of Kelly, Kentucky. The way the description of that is, you could take that as a demon, the description of it. You could take it as a goblin. I mean, what's a goblin? What is it? Or a hobgoblin, or it's an alien. Religion out of it. It's some kind of. It's not human. It's humanoid, because they're described with arms and legs and a head. But that's pretty much where it ends. The similarities, they're reported with different ears, big ears. That look, that's not what humans don't have. That even there's no birth defect that humans have giant, pointy, elf-like ears or anything. But that was the description there. So elves and gnomes. I mean, these things, pixies, fairies. These are things that people have said they've seen. And some things I think are hoaxes. People want to put their name out there, and they want to, like the two sisters who did the cutouts of the fairies, and it was a hoax, but it was, people bought it for years and years, and they never admitted it to something like that. It brings people into this with kind of a wow, that's kind of cool. I mean, and it gets them involved, and then they hear about, like you were saying, Scotland, especially over in Europe, there's a folk mythology in these local areas, and it's a way to teach lessons, I think, and tell kids maybe, to be careful, or else, this creature or that creature will come out. Don't go into the forest walking alone. That's good advice. That's good advice. You don't want to scare them too much, but just to interest them, maybe with a cool story attached to it. I think it's a good lesson for kids. And then, and then some kids grow up and they grow out of it. They don't really believe in it, and then they're walking in the forest and then they see something they can't explain. They say, oh, that reminds me of when I was a kid, and I was told these legends. So, listen, you got to keep an open mind. I can't say one way or another unless I look into it for myself. And I just have to say, I don't believe in anything specifically when it comes to these far-fetched things, but you got to say, I don't doubt that it could be possible. And especially with something so out of the ordinary as a UFO encounter from an alien vessel coming in from outer space to our world and landing in a remote area, but maybe somebody's there hiking. Or and because they and they say, oh, because we're trying to be discreet and nonchalant about coming in under the radar, whatever, uncloak. But there's a hiker there, and that hiker has the most incredible experience of his life or her life, and that's fantastic. And I think things like that do happen. I think they can happen. That's not outside the realm of possibility. And the universe is so vast that there could be intelligent life forms with spacefaring technology and vessels that come here, and they could look like anything. They could look like any type of thing, maybe somewhat like humans, maybe nothing like humans, and still operate the vehicle in their own way. And
we had
they may
instances.
they may realize that they can't breathe our air, so they bring their own gases, whatever they breathe, and have helmets and stuff. Exactly what we would do if we went out venturing to other planets, and we do that. We go to the moon. So you can't say if we can do it, why couldn't they do it? I think the universe is filled with life, and I think it's a matter of time before NASA and other space agencies around the world who go out into other bodies, heavenly bodies out there, bring back samples, are going to admit that yes, they have found various life forms in a range of. I don't know if they're going to come out right away and say we found another civilization where we're communicating with. I think that's pretty big news, but they'll do it small. They'll say we found some microscopic, enzymes or something, that is a rudimentary, basic form of life, and stuff like that. I think they're willing to admit that. So that's life. That is life. That proves that life can exist outside. And it's just like your imagination could go in a million directions of what that intelligent life could look like. That is not just the microbes that we have here on Earth or out in space, but we have us, and we are technological. And I won't say everyone I know is intelligent, but that's okay. You don't have to be. We're alive. It's just life, and you're participating in life. We have our own lives, and we have the joys and the ups and downs of our own life, but we're also part of life, and we're also part of the big life. So
in a totality sense, exactly,
it's interwoven into other people, our friends, and then all these other things that we don't see on a daily basis. They're still part of life, even if we don't know it or not.
It's funny because we've had instances of people saying that orbs chased him out of the woods in these particular triangular areas. Orbs just being seen, whether they're colored or white or they're translucent, if they're light. This, at least it's the way that's been described to me, is the actual essence of what we would consider a soul to be, or some sort of sentient energy. So. Yeah, I think a lot of these ancient folks really didn't know what they were looking at. They had their superstitions, they had their legend, just as we do today, and still put plenty of misnomers all over these particular subjects at large, just not knowing what we're seeing, trying to make it something familiar.
When someone comes along and says that, I won't say you got to take them seriously, but you got to listen to them. And in case, you got to treat it with respect and delicacy as to how they feel about it and how it affected them. And you don't want to just say, oh, that didn't happen, because you weren't there. You don't know. It could have. It really could have. And in a lot of cases, maybe even if they brought someone, they wouldn't see it exactly the way they saw it too. But the way their experience felt to them, you can't deny a person that. And you gotta say, well, they really. And you don't have to put them on a lie detector to see if they're telling the truth about. They're saying they saw it, and they seem like they're being realistic about it. You don't have to believe them. It's not about believing it. It's about letting them say it. It's about letting them share with how they feel, and you can think about how you feel about what they said later, or you don't have to confront them with it. If you don't believe them, you can allow them to just have a place to come say it. We're not going to say we believe you. We're not going to say we don't believe you. We're going to say that's what you're saying, and that's fine. That's legitimate. That's valid. You're entitled to say that, and we encourage people to say whatever they've gone through. Tell someone like Michael Roser here on Dark Hour Paranormal, if you've had an event in your life that you don't think is normal, you can't explain it, or you saw something, or especially if you recorded something with a camera, send it to Michael, because he wants to review that and analyze it and put it on the internet. And because a lot of people can't do that themselves, they might take something and they don't know what to do with it. Send it here. Send it to Dark Hour Paranormal or one of our affiliates that Michael works with, like Third Phase of Moon or Rich Giordano from Gufon. He's somebody who will take that time and they will look at it, and they're not just going to say, oh, somebody said they saw something and laugh right away. And no, we're going to pay attention. We're going to look at it. We have friends who they know they can trust us. They come to me, they come to Michael, the same people, or they come to me and I say, show it to Michael or show it to Rich Giordano, and they're going to take the time and they're really going to get back to you, and they're not going to say what it is. They're going to say what they think it could be. That's a different thing, because it's not ruling anything out, and it's leaving, still up to how you experienced and what you experienced. It's all a personal thing. Now, these triangles here, they're serious, and we can't just, it's going to be fun, and it's going to be enjoyable, and we're going to be smiling all the way, but we got to also take it seriously, because, we got to watch out for ourselves too. There's also, spooky things and eerie, creepy things that are not always pleasant in the paranormal and paranormal phenomena. You mentioned the orbs chasing out the hikers in some areas, and that's been reported. Those could be, like you said, spirits. That could be ghosts. It could be poltergeist activity, a haunted location, a haunted area, haunted woods, or something like that. It could be there, and we have to protect ourselves from that, or from a natural monster, anthropoid, hominid, like a Bigfoot type creature. They're also seen in these triangles, and they're also seen in Massachusetts, believe it or not, in the Bridgewater Triangle.
And you know what? Going in with the scientific instrumentation that we'll have at the time, whatever extent that may be, there's a good possibility that even if we face some sort of imminent danger coming through to us, our bodies are going to feel that first. The instruments might pick it up, and it might be, post what we feel, but I really do believe that your intelligence and your intuition entering a place like this are your best guides as to where you can and cannot go. Now, of course, you can ignore that and, perhaps deal with the consequences and then find yourself with an attachment or up against something that's more aggressive. There was one particular case in one of these triangles, and I'll have to look through my notes at some point to find out exactly which one it was. I can't recall. But back in the early part of the 20th century, there was a hunter who went out, and this guy was a very seasoned woodsman, and unfortunately he got separated from the rest of the guys, but they thought, all right, well, he's an experienced woodsman, he'll be back. And so they waited at camp for him. He never arose. His body was found some 3 days later in those same woods, surrounded by what appeared to be very large footprints, and the guy was squozed to death. Okay, so how does that sort of thing happen? Again, not listening to yourself. But then again, you go into the woods with a gun and you come up against a Bigfoot. First thing that I would do would be to put that gun down and communicate or go about this a different way, because I think they, obviously have a different approach to us, at least. Before I forget, Jimmy Mack had mentioned also the 5,000-year-old Conchno stone in Scotland, if I'm saying that correctly. I believe this is the stone that is out in that same area and was with the Native Americans at the time. I'm sorry, the indigenous culture at the time. They had a whole legend about how if you stand on this rock, it will open up and swallow you. Now, we've heard that even over in Mount Shasta and other places, that this is, again, a specific phenomenon of stones opening up, and there's legend of, little beings pulling you down, and once you're in, that's it. You're gone. Now, you talk about David Paulides and his 411 missing people.
I was just going to mention that. Yeah, it sounds a lot like that.
There's that element of it, too.
And, I don't know. I don't think even has been as much proof that it was Bigfoot. Then the story that you just said that in the national parks, but that sure could be a logical deduction there too. That it could be a live creature that's unknown, a cryptid.
Well, if you walk into one of these habitats and you're not welcome and they let you know and you're out there trailblazing because you're a hunter and you got a gun, you think you're safe against whatever comes up because you think you know the woods that well. Next thing you know, you find yourself in a situation where they are forced to be aggressive or hostile. And we've heard of
The
that
hunter
too.
becomes the hunted.
That's correct. If you want to look at it that way, absolutely. But he was warned, I'm sure, before
Right.
going in this place. And you know what? Maybe it's not a Bigfoot, but the anomalous footsteps in the mud around him and the fact that, again, he was reported to be squozed to death, that sounds very, very suspicious. And it sounds like truncated behavior. Not necessarily like I'm going out to hunt you and I'm going to hurt you because this is what I want to do. You're in the wrong place at the wrong time. You shouldn't be here. Sorry that you got to go. I mean, that's just my thought on that,
Well,
Mr.
maybe
Catfish.
it was the very fact that he had a gun, and maybe the Bigfoots are smarter, and they know that that's very dangerous to have, and they eliminated him just because he could hurt one of their kind with that.
Absolutely.
Now, if I was going to hunt Bigfoot, I wouldn't be carrying live ammunition like that. I'd want to shoot him with film cameras, video cameras. If I was going to bring a gun, it would have a tranquilizer dart. That I believe, because then it's a humane way to wrangle Bigfoot and kind of get proof that way instead of having a corpse of a Bigfoot. You really want to keep them alive for scientific study. You don't want to dissect them right away. Let them die of natural causes and then dissect them. Let them live a full life as a Bigfoot in captivity, maybe the first one. So all you hunters out there, I know it's legal now on the books to hunt Bigfoot in Oklahoma. Now, I hope there's no Bigfoot in Oklahoma.
Heard that.
But there's a bunch of morons out there with guns. And I hope no one dresses up as Bigfoot out there because you're going to get your ass shot at. So that's not a very smart thing. I don't think that's a very good idea to make Bigfoot hunting legal. There's also laws in Washington state, I believe, where Bigfoot it is illegal to hunt Bigfoot. And that's on the law books. So that makes you kind of wonder. The government knows that along the North Pacific, that there are these anthropoid hominids living amongst the forest and the trees, and just to leave them alone, and you're gonna face charges if you kill one or if you shoot one. So I think that's good.
Even the attempt, just going out and doing that. I think, like you said, this is on the law books. This is by state. They have various laws. Mostly out, little echo there. Most of what we see is, in the Midwest or down south. I mean, where a lot of this activity is purported all the time. Even though we have a lot of this up, even in the Northeast, it's more prominent in some of these warmer areas or out in the more sparse areas
I was a little disappointed when I heard that law was enacted in Washington on April 1st of 1969 or something. So it was April Fool's Day, and it took a little bit of the magic away from it. But still, it's still a law, and it's maybe that was a diversion. Okay, now there's a question. It could be, or maybe it's not. So that's still. It lets your imagination still run, I think.
I think entire communities.
That took it back a step for me.
I think entire communities, especially pocketed and isolated insular communities who've experienced this stuff for generations, they already have an inherent belief. So, for example, you go out to certain places in Hawaii. I'll use that for an example. There are many indigenous folks that are still there from long lineages, and they'll tell you, oh yeah, we've seen this particular creature. Oh yeah, he's around all the time, like they're talking about buying steak at the grocery store, and yet we're out there researching it because to us it's something completely foreign, and it's new for us. Mr. Catfish 2100, thank you so much for your $5 super chat. Took me a second to get there, but we are engaged in some fantastic conversation here tonight. But continuing supporter of Dark Hour Paranormal, Mr. Catfish 2100, thank you so much, brother. I can't thank you enough.
And speaking of cryptids and in the triangle, in the Bridgewater Triangle, there's been other things besides just Bigfoot as a creature that's been spotted. You mentioned UFOs, and I'm not sure if aliens per se have been spotted there. I'm sure we could probably track down a case or two of reported aliens themselves, creatures. But there have been weird occurrences of other things like giant snakes that have been spotted out there. Something that you might see in the Everglades, down where Rich is, down in Florida, but usually not around here, like an anaconda or some kind, or a boa constrictor or a python.
And this is at a time, by the way, that nobody would have had. I know you can't hear me.
We're going to get to the best. We're going to save the best for last. But I've heard that there've been Thunderbird sightings in the Bridgewater Triangle, and one was actually reported by a Norton police sergeant from Massachusetts, Thomas Downey. Sergeant Downey actually reported some kind of a Thunderbird. Now, what's a Thunderbird? Well, the Native Americans have a mythology around a giant bird that lives bigger than any bird that we currently can think of on Earth, like condor, which is the largest down in South America, in Peru. But it could be something of legend. And like they make the Firebird the car, and they have it on the windshield like a phoenix, maybe some type of mythological bird. And that's been seen in Massachusetts. So I'm going to be looking for evidence of that. It also could be like a pterodactyl, something that lived from the prehistoric age. I think that was a description. I think when a lot of people, when they report pterodactyls, I think really they're talking about a petrosaur named the pteranodon with the large crest. Because a pterodactyl, kind of like a rhamphorhynchus, it's like a rounded head in the back. So when they talk about it, the ones with the long, bone plate, that is not a pterodactyl, a pteranodon of the petrosaur. So I think that may be a description. And if that's true, then it could be a time warp situation that's in the area, or it could be some kind of an underground vent system that lead other life form from under can come out. But it more falls into what I would think of as being a parallel time vortex, maybe letting a dinosaur through. Because a bird like that, a thunderbird, they're flying through the air in midair, and if they just in their own time they come through the vortex, they could just fly right into our dimension and just keep on going until the edge of the triangle, and then fly back home. Just a quick visit. They may not live there, but
we don't understand the geometry.
And that was a police sergeant. So that's kind of. I'd like to talk to him. I don't know if he's still alive or what, but if we could track him down, maybe we can get an interview of him.
That would be fantastic.
If he saw it, maybe because police are known to carry cameras, official cameras. Maybe he took a picture of it.
Maybe at that time he did. I don't know if you can hear me at the moment.
I wanted to save this for last, the Puckwudgie. Of course, you knew I was going to bring that up. We don't know what a Puckwudgie is. We haven't seen one. So, your guess is as good as mine.
You and I haven't seen one. But there are accounts of what they look like.
There are accounts of what they look like. Sort of shorter, humanoids, troll-like, large features, maybe porcupine-like features, ridges. They're obviously not human beings, So but yet they walk around and they can interact. I heard they can talk.
Let me interrupt real quick for just a moment. I want to thank Mysteria Dragonheart for her $1.99 super sticker, which is awesome. Thank you so much. Another continuing supporter of Dark Hour Paranormal. And of course, I have Aaron Morrison sending a $1.49 super sticker. Thank you so much. Also, a continuing supporter of Dark Hour Paranormal. Folks, can't appreciate it enough. Really, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Keeps the show going. Keeps me out of the day job as much as I can. And I'm working for you. And I appreciate that wholeheartedly. Thank you so much. Let me just point this out, too. When you mentioned the snakes, in some of these areas. This was before a time where it was somewhat popular for people to bring exotic animals from different places and have them as pets. Today, if we find an alligator where it's not supposed to be somewhere, we figure that it might have grown up in an apartment in a bathtub someplace, or somebody else had, allowed this thing to run out when it got too big. Whatever the case may be, if it's not in an area where it's native to, chances are somebody brought it there. And again, these are, I believe the snake that was seen, or the snakes, I should say, there were multiple sightings that were seen in the early part of the 20th century in the Bridgewater Triangle, were actually described as the size and width of stovepipes. So back then, those stovepipes, we're talking a very massive, thick-bodied reptile here that, again, does not necessarily deserve to be in the environment because it's not native. You've brought up the Thunderbirds. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Puckwudgies there. But again, we come back to this idea that these are thinner areas of reality, and perhaps they're crossing over as naturally as you and I breathe. And it's just not something that we have the capacity to utilize at this moment, or we're not at the vibrational level in our own spiritual evolution that we can utilize a spot like that. But I believe if these were here already, which I think they were prior to human involvement in whatever case, these are naturally occurring places that are probably akin to some sort of center chakra on the planet. Now, maybe it's not the major chakra system. We're looking at smaller chakra systems, and if that's the case, and there's a reflection within our own auric field, we could go down that path. But before we do,
if we knew how the universe worked, it's such a mystery. I mean, it could be a nexus, nexus point of different realities, and it could be, like pumas, like panthers. Black panthers also were spotted in this area. They're not indigenous to. We don't have black panthers roaming throughout the New England woods, but here they are there. So maybe it could be something that was in Asia or Africa, and it just walking along and was, it was teleported to this area and just walked through the triangle for a little bit, was spotted, and then wound up back home. And it came from this time, but just somewhere else, and it was an apportation of a being.
Well, for those who might be sitting there and thinking, well, how in God's name could a prehistoric animal walk its way over whatever land bridge and then decide to settle its species in, central Massachusetts or, southern Massachusetts? Here's my thought on this. The Hockomock Swamp, which is at the center of the Bridgewater Triangle, is absolutely unnavigable. I'm not saying it right. You can't navigate. You can't get through it. It's too dense. There are too many sinkholes. There are other anomalies that are happening within the topography there that, essentially are swallowing parts of the land, parts of the swamp. There's all sorts of different predators that go throughout those waters, and at one point in time, and this was actually quite recently, if you got far enough into the Hockomock Swamp and got lost, that's where you stayed. The rescue efforts would only go so far because they could only get in so far, and it was up to you to find your way out. I think today they have GPS and heat signals and so forth that they've located people who have been lost, but it's very easy to get disoriented, and that particular thick will hide something in the way of prehistoric animal or any animal that doesn't want to be seen. You simply can't get back there. And of course, if we go through some of these other triangles, we find areas of concentration in the same way. You can't get through there. Well, why not? Well, it's too dense. The brush is what it is. You can't do it. So we have only speculation to stand on. Now, out of all the triangles that we're talking about, again, we spoke about the construct, how these came to be, and who named them. But there is one particular oddity that actually is in the shape of a triangle, and that's the Pag Triangle in Croatia. Now, one of the sides measures 72 feet by 70. I forget what I think it's got to be more than 72 feet. But anyway, it's 72 by 72, and then the bottom is 105. Okay, so you have these two adjacent lines, if you will, within the construct that measure exactly what they are. Now, the curious thing about this, other than it being a perfect isosceles shape, is that the apex itself points towards the star system Sirius. Now, this is significant with PAG because some theorize that that all plays into it is probably around the same time. Scientists believe that the triangle itself that is actually comprised of stones. Okay, so maybe it is actually 72 feet by 72 feet by 105 feet. These stones are of a different color, and people have surmised that this is because they were exposed to a heat blast, superheated, and some have even proposed maybe 12,000 years ago, and this actually corresponds with what scientists believe the lifespan of this particular construct to be. They believe that it came around 12,000 years ago. Well, if you remember back some time ago, we were talking to Brian Forrester through Third Phase of Moon. Gufan was present as well, and we were speaking about some of these singes on the constructs over in Egypt and some of the stones where it looked like there was some sort of blast or something had occurred in the way of a maelstrom. If this was 12,000 years ago, and then we can somehow verify to a certain degree that perhaps this happened over around the same time period, we might have correlation there in way of that particular theory as some sort of extraterrestrial or some sort of time traveler coming, and there was a conflict of some sort. But that being said, anybody who goes into this and they get over 500,000 visitors a year to this particular place, they say that cell phones don't work, any any electronics malfunction within this area.
Compass.
Compass is going wild. So there's something there. There's certainly something there. But what it is, we have such a tough time putting our thumbs on, but maybe it's because we only have, or at least in our perception, the two thumbs to work with, when in fact we're forgetting the rest of the body that we can interpret some of this stuff with.
There's no clear-cut answers as to why those are there. Brian Forster, you ask Brian Forster, and that he will say that occurred during the Younger Dryas era. Age, the Younger Dryas, and that there was some kind of a cataclysm that befell the world at that time, and it could have been something as up along the lines of some kind of an impact from outer space, and some kind of a nuclear type devastation occurring from the welled up forces that were impacted on the Earth in a kind of a crater situation, and or if it hit the sea or anywhere, and that could have explained some of the things, because now they're saying that when things are defrosting down in Antarctica, that they're seeing evidence. Now I don't know if this is proof because I haven't been down there to check on it archaeologically. I wish it could be opened up for access to us to go down there and investigate. Maybe, I don't know, the Cousins brothers could send us down there. Maybe they'd come with us down there. We'd all take a ship and look at some of these things that have been said to have thought out that were before the last ice age, a society of megalithic work that we haven't seen and we don't know about yet because it's been buried in ice for hundreds of years and stuff. So that's exciting, and that's a great possibility too. So just in case, you never know. It'd be so good to be some of the first people to have access to it now and get some answers that way.
It's all about that boots on the ground research, and I'll be honest, as much as that is certainly imperative, this is what we do. Guys, we have a lot of fun doing it, and it's absolutely phenomenal to be out there and having that 360-degree experience stepping into this location, because, again, there are certain feelings and emotions that you may experience going into a spot like this, but you don't necessarily feel it when you watch the documentary. So, we're very privy and privileged to be able to go in there and give you our interpretation as well as the science and the history behind what we're researching. To me, that's the most fun aspect of this entirely. Let me bring up a few more of these triangles.
Especially when we can go in our own backyard, dark hour, and something in Massachusetts where it's like, wow, there's a hot spot right here. If we don't, boy, we'd be pretty stupid not to go down there and check it out when it's right available. I mean, we don't have to go that far. We'd love to go to the Devil's Triangle in the Pacific. We'd love to go to the Devil's Triangle, the Bermuda Triangle, to explain that too. In fact, when I was a kid, I used to see myself on a boat investigating weird phenomena in the Bermuda Triangle. It was just like a flash forward I have of what I would be doing when I'm older. So, because I grew up with, Von Daniken, and I was watching Dr. J Radio. He had Eric Von Daniken on there, and I grew up with those books too. And my dad, I was exposed to parapsychology, in the 70s, and what was it? Psychic secrets behind the Iron Curtain, and Soviet parapsychology, and what the thought was on that. And they were looking into bioplasma, what we call ectoplasm, in the U.S. they call bioplasma or bioplasm in the USSR. In Russian, it's different than that, but that's the English translation is bioplasm, and it correlates a lot with the chi or the key energy of Oriental mysticism and the martial arts. So studying that as a kid and just learning about the ancient astronaut theory and looking at some of the things that I'd see in person later, like the Pacal tablet down in Mexico, in Palenque, Mexico. I got to really see it in person, and that was so amazing. But to grow up with that and in search of Leonard Nimoy, I mean, I loved it. It was one of my favorite shows. And I just said, this is what I want to do. And I knew back then, and my dad was already kind of into it, to kind of steered me in that direction. So yeah, I'm fascinated by any of these intangible mysteries that we have, the metaphysics and parapsychology, ESP and ghosts phenomena, poltergeists, investigating them, what the earth, because I believe we all have a ghost inside of us. And upon the death of a human body, we cannot support it anymore, then it lives on in some other state. And like the spiritualists say, how your memories and your personality is also is contained in that force that moves on and can come back, or it can be in the ether, in the etheric plane, the etheric world. Ethereal, it's ethereal. But it's just another vibrational frequency that you can see. And that's why I'm so fascinated with Tesla and everything, because he tried to tap into different, frequencies in radio using Marconi's radios. And he tried to do time travel experiments and open portals. And you look at some of the writers like Lockwood, Ingersoll Lockwood. He was writing about it. He may have known Tesla. Tesla may have let him borrow the time machine, because he's got some pretty accurate stuff. Not everything that comes down the pike, all these claims of time travelers and everything, but it's a phenomenon. I think really, if I can go anywhere around the world, I'm fascinated. I want to investigate, and I think this triangle here, there's some good evidence that this could be a time portal into the past here, because you mentioned Hockomock Swamp, and the phenomena. That name itself is I believe Wampanoag word that means the place where spirits dwell.
That's right.
That's Hockomock Swamp. So that
just goes to show you it was there before, and they knew.
It's a spirit. Yeah, it's a spirit dwelling place. So we're going to find spirits there. It's not like they're going to leave when we go there. There'll be 2 more spirits there at least. I don't know who else is coming with us. We got to get Rich up. Come up.
As much as I would love, as much as I would love to have Rich up here, I know that coming from Florida, if the timing was right, because I know he'll be up here in Washington at one point or another. I don't know when. I would love to have him come along. I certainly wouldn't make him come up just for this, but I would certainly extend that. And I don't know if I might have said something, but probably not. So I'll definitely extend it out to him. I think, excuse me, Third Phase of Moon knows that they're always welcome, but Rich should know the same thing. He's always welcome up here as well.
Absolutely. So awesome.
The place where spirits dwell, as the name, okay, there's another triangle in Russia, and it's called the Molyobka. Hold on, let's try this again. Molyobka. There we go, I got it. The Molyobka Triangle in Russia is actually, that word means something akin to where gods and spirits gather. So This is a consistency we're seeing across some of these portals, vortexes, and yet still within this triangular configuration. But it's so strange to me. I wonder if any of these triangles actually line up with each other if you go straight through the earth to connect them.
Yeah, I wonder that too, and I bet they do. It would be as easy as getting my globe out and putting a string of yarn on a needle and just say, hey, can we put this? Would this go straight through? Yeah, or a laser beam. I got some lasers here. Map it out. I think we could do it, man. I think you'd find when you do that little experiment that they do line up and they do intersect, and probably through the world and probably around the world in that grid formation that we've seen. They probably do. And that's that's an important clue. That's got to tell you something right there, that all these places are connected. They're not joining, but it's like spooky action at a distance. Maybe the atoms and the ion state, that's how they teleport, is like static electricity, and just boom, you're there. It pulls
I
you.
find it fascinating that that's the experience that we continue to have. And of course, some of these triangles really sit in the way of UFO sightings. And of course, yeah, there's other things that are mentioned, but for a place like what I had mentioned, Falkirk Island or Triangle, or even the one I had just mentioned there in Russia. I mean, the Great River Triangle in New York, since 1918 to 2014, they've had 40 recorded UFO sightings, some of them very clear in representation of what was experienced. Some of these were experienced by multiple people on multiple angles, on multiple occasions. They were consistently experiencing the same sighting.
Right.
The Romblon Triangle in the Philippines, where vessels just disappear without a trace, like the Bermuda Triangle. And there are all these arduous battles that were fought within there. I mean, horrifically intense battles with plenty of casualties during the different conflicts throughout that history of the area. Now, I'll say this, and I think I've mentioned this before. I've been through the Bermuda Triangle twice, sailing. And the first time we were going through, I had no idea that we were going through the Bermuda Triangle. I didn't realize. We had crossed over one of the apexes, and I think it was off to the west end. And the second time, we actually sailed right through the entire triangle. And I was aware of that. So I went out on the deck of the ship, and I just kind of hung out there, tried to see if I could feel anything odd or see anything in the skies. Now, one of the things that I didn't see anything, and I didn't have anything to report on that, but it was cool nonetheless going through there. One of the things that people have presented in way of how perhaps airplanes disappear, and perhaps ships could fall under this category as well, are these microburst clouds, which sort of take on the form of a honeycomb, and these are supercharged areas of air which blast down, and within that force, possibly that's pushing some of these planes down low enough that they're losing their altitude, whatever the case may be. Doesn't explain all the disappearances, but it has certainly been a theory that's been projected as recently as 2012, I believe.
Yes, that's a good theory. It's a good theory. I mean, it makes more sense to say that finding a way that you could say that there's a good example of that than finding a good example that it was high technology from Atlantis that pulled it down, because that now you're talking about you have to go under sea and you have to scuba dive down to the bottom. But it's funny. Edgar Casey, who was a man who a lot of people are familiar with, that had a foresight, kind of a intuition about things, and he was a psychic. He claimed to be psychic. He spoke and he wrote about the fact that Atlantis would surface. And he put a date. It was a prediction he made, and he put a date of, I believe, 1968. And in 1968, off the Isle of Bimini, off the coast of the island of Bimini, they discovered some megalithic roads underneath the ocean and blocks that are massive, and it formed kind of like a road, an ancient road that could have been one day above surface and sank. And kind of was rediscovered at the right time that Casey said it would be. So I find that fascinating, and that's in the Bermuda Triangle as well.
That's a good point. I forgot about that. That was a very good
story. And there's so many things that you can only see from above, like the sharks that are constructed and things. And if you were down there, you'd be swimming around in a lagoon. But you fly over it in a helicopter or airplane, and you see that you're swimming in something shaped like a shark. Who built that? Who could have had the engineering? And when? It's ancient, obviously. So they're doing things for people or higher gods and beings to see from above. But that proves that they had flight, because before we commonly agree that flight was something that mankind could use, there may have been some kind of secret flight or something.
I've often mentioned in way of what ancient people had. I put it like this, okay? So by and large, we see the trajectory that we've taken as a modern civilization, and we understand what we have at our disposal to create things that either bring a utilitarian service to us or some sort of comfort, pleasure. We have houses built of wood with roofs over our head. We have central heating, whatever the case may be. We have all these different elements that create the life that we're living today. Perhaps some of these civilizations, and we are talking hundreds of thousands of years, if you will, that they've had time to develop and disappear, grow and rise and go. Maybe they had the same ideas as we have when we look up at the sky and say, man, I wonder what it would be like to fly like that bird. But instead of figuring out that the propeller moved this way and, you needed certain air buoyancy and way of the architecture of the airplane to get you up and lift it and stay up, maybe they figured something else out that we just haven't looked at yet. Maybe it was a different way of evolution. And yet all of what they had could very quickly parallel some of the modern conveniences that we had, such as electricity, Baghdad battery, and so forth. You name it, there are all these bits of evidence that point to this was the case. They just didn't necessarily live, exactly the way we do, because the world itself wasn't so aware of itself, I'll say. I won't say conjoined.
They had the same needs and goals that we do. They had the same, physical needs for shelter and obviously
yes.
Lighting at night. It got dark, so they knew fire was something that gave light that they could kind of coddle and keep it going as a torch. And they found other ways to manipulate the light and use the sun and bounce it and shine it into interior rooms using polished mirrors and things like that to illuminate indoor things. And
it was sophisticated.
Also, they experimented with electricity, like you mentioned, the Baghdad battery that really generated electricity, and they could. Mm-hmm. They believed that Egyptians and people like that also had the technology and used it for electroplating gold and things onto wood, and also electric lights, the light bulb, because you have the Dendera light bulb, which is like a supersonic light bulb that they show with cords coming out of it. And I just want to do a shout out to my girlfriend Lori, who's watching. Hi, honey. I told you I was going to be on tonight, so I didn't give you much notice, but hopefully.
Hi, Lori.
Hi, Lori. And she's my best gal. We're about 37 years in our together since high school.
Jesus Christ, buddy.
And
good for you.
I love you, Lori. You're there watching me. So, I just want to say that supersonic light bulb. And so that's fascinating. But the pyramids, the shape of the pyramid is triangle.
Mm-hmm.
4 sides, or actually it's 8-sided in Egypt. But
in Egypt, yep.
You break it up delta shape. But the triangle, it makes you think of pyramid. And we're not talking about Jeremy Corbell's pyramids. Those were not the real pyramids. They had, if they were pyramids, they didn't look like pyramids. They looked like triangles, but that's because it was a triangle filter, and you could see the FAA lights on it. So if UFOs have FAA lights on it, then Corbell was right. Those are UFOs. And there was no swarm. There was, I think, 3 in the shot or 2. And even Greer said he thinks those could be exotic craft. I didn't see anything exotic about it, Stephen Greer. So
neither
we're talking
did anybody
about
else.
Different kind of triangle, right, Michael? Tonight,
of course.
Those are triangles too, so I wanted to mention that.
Well, it's still curious that is some of the architecture or geometry that's being utilized in some of these crafts that we've seen, specifically the TR-3B that we talk about consistently. There has to be something to that basic geometric shape. We understand that the circle came first. When you look into sacred geometry, it starts with the 2-dimensional. It starts with a point. Okay, so it's 1-dimensional in a sense, moves off into a line. That line can then see from point to point, has an opposition to itself. From that point, it's 2-dimensional. It can then become 3-dimensional based on that particular construct. And there's this whole science and theory that goes behind it, leading up to the zygote and how this continues to expand, but still in the way of a circle. And eventually, after you encompass everything you could ever research and know about in this reality, you find the flower of life symbol, which has every single mathematic and music
yes.
Tone within this, encased everything within, science and physics. It's all within this
everything in nature,
shape.
everything of matter, right? It's like the Fibonacci sequence, Yeah, the golden ratio, the five. I mean,
Well, so the
yeah,
difference
and
between
also,
the two.
what
Mhm.
was I
Go
going
ahead.
to say? Oh shoot, I was going to say something. I forgot, but
While
yeah,
you're thinking
it was
that here,
along those lines too. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I forgot it again. Shoot, I just had it.
that's all right. It'll come back to you. The difference between the Fibonacci spiral and the golden mean spiral, I'll point out as I've done before, but for those of you who didn't hear this, Fibonacci spiral is a spiral that has a beginning and an end, and it can be found and observed in many forms of nature, and possibly in all forms of nature if you look far enough. But the studies that have been done, especially with plants, this is the cycle that they follow, the geometry they follow. The reason that it's the Fibonacci spiral is because it's based on the golden mean spiral, which is infinite on both ends. Now, life as we understand it, the third dimension, as I've been told, does not necessarily compute that to a degree where it can't. I mean, you and I can talk theoretically about infinity, but to think about it in way of experience, we're still like, okay, so there has to be a beginning somewhere. There's an end here. We compartmentalize it. There's always that beginning and end. So that's whoever created, or however reality was created, they realized that this was something that was needed in order to bring about the experience of a beginning and an end. So guess what? As I've said before, death is probably not natural the way that we experience it. It's just a product of our consciousness. Okay, it's not something that has to always be. Now that's a revolutionary
I think the alive
thought.
see it differently than the dead see it. I think
I'm
they do.
sure.
I think they do.
100%. Of course.
So I remember what I was going to say now. I was
Okay.
thinking about triangle, and you got three sides to a triangle: 1, 2, 3, and 3 is you've heard 3 is the magic number, and also Tesla 369. He said that was the key to understanding the universe. So triangle, Tesla again, and I think it all correlates. It all corresponds. And in sort of in Einstein's way, where he says everything's relative, and everything in the universe has a relativity to itself and one another. Every speck of matter or antimatter that you could have possibly is all connected, even though not physically connected. It is on another level, and if you could see into that level, you could see how it's connected by what we can't see with the human eye. But if we could have other kind of instruments, perhaps we could detect it and measure it and see it and prove it. Something that you can't see, like oxygen or anything like that, is invisible, but it's there, and just like that. The Fibonacci, and I think it's important to be someone who says, listen, I'm going to keep an open mind and say, I'm not going to say I don't believe it, even if it's, I'm not saying you have to get into things you wouldn't believe in, or you have to try to, research things that you don't care about. No, find what's interesting, find what you like, and say, you know what, I can do this in my area. I'm whoever is out there watching in your area, you can do the same thing we do. You can go out, go to the library, or just go online and look up your own town, see if has there been any weird occurrences, when and by who, and look up the dates and look up the places and try to go there. Try to get some pictures, see if you find anything interesting or mysterious, and send it to Michael, because that's what we're all about. I love to watch this show, and you've had some great shows and some great documentaries, mini documentaries, I don't know if you call them, where you go out and you explore around the area, and those are great. I watch those. I love them. They're fantastic. And the way you gain access to some of these places, I guess you ask if it's okay, and then you get permission, and then it's better when you're not trying to go sneaking around places and, oh shit, let's get out of here, they're coming. I love getting permission, because then you really have carte blanche, and they let you walk around and take. Man, those shows are great. And
there's only been a couple spaces,
the hollows, glens, and the dales that you go over, and this is the kind of stuff I love to do. And when you said the Bridgewater Triangle, I said, yeah, I'm going, because I love investigating the paranormal with Michael here, and we go all over the place, and we have a great time, and we do serious. We take it seriously, though. It's not just a gas, and we're not there to pull anyone's leg and create a bunch of fake stuff. We don't have to. It's all real. It's all right there. And but it takes guys like you and me who are interested to go there. And then we have something. Now we can show you. This place is amazing. It's just awesome. It's fun. And, you know, if you're ever in the area, come and visit these locations. Stay over in the night that's reputed to be a haunted house. What are you scared of? You know, we're all ghosts inside anyway. So there's a ghost that does not, you know, what? Spend the night. What are you tell me you're too scared? Come on, it's not scary. It's fun. It's exciting. And imagine if you got a picture of a ghost. Oh.
It's all in the way of knowledge and experience, and of course expanding that knowledge within yourself, but then expounding that knowledge and imparting it to others for them to take that as part of their archive or cache, if you will, and then bounce it against their experiences and what they may experience next if they decide to go to some of these locations. Like you said, the Bridgewater Triangle here in Massachusetts is literally in our backyard. And, you know, it would be a shame if we didn't address this. It's one of the most reputedly haunted places in all of the Northeast. Now, of course, and I want to bring up this triangle in just a moment. Before I do, there was another theory that I had come across that I'll throw out there. Perhaps some of you are familiar with it. And this also relates to how planes may find their way from the sky down into the sea in places like the Bermuda Triangle. And that is known as graveyard spiral theory. Now, essentially what this theory suggests is that the pilot becomes temporarily disoriented based on spatial differentiation, and in doing so finds himself losing altitude. By the time he realizes where he is, he's already too late and he cannot gain up, or whatever the case may be. But again, this only supports some of the disappearances and possible outcomes that have come from whatever has happened in way of events during
and I think if you listen to some of the radio broadcasts that were two ways between control base and the pilot and co-pilot themselves, you can hear almost exactly what you just said. They report that they're coming disoriented. Nothing's making sense. They think they're on one location, they're being told they're not, and they can't account for it. So that you can hear the recordings of that just like that. So that is that's a wonderful. But then there's also things that they're not planes. They're like boats. They're ships.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the Devil's or the Formosa Triangle in Asia and the Pacific, and they think that there's been similar to the Bermuda Triangle. There's been disappearances of ships over the years. Again, starting in like the 50s, like 1950 through 1954, there were tons of ships that they just don't know what happened to them. They vanished. Were they dematerialized? Did they go through a portal? Were they teleported through time? Or did a thermal vent underneath the ocean open up
That's been proposed
and create, or seismic disturbance, or some kind of undersea volcano? But plumes of methane have been known to shoot out, and this could be sucking the ships into a
lowers the density of the water.
Yeah, and kind of sink them that way, and that'd be a shame for the crew. It's terrible, but you know, a lot of these sailors, they know their job is dangerous, and they're taking it on the mission, so they know what they're getting into, and they're adults, and we do have to take our hats off and kind of mourn the disappearance of them because they never came back.
But Robert, too, I mean, if you recall, in some of these experiences, especially within the Bermuda Triangle, oftentimes the ships would go dark. Okay. Last radio broadcast, they couldn't get to them. Seems like everything was shut off. They'd send out the search parties, and sure enough, on occasion, they'd find this tanker or this boat out there in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle with nobody on it. So the entire crew has disappeared. The logbook has stopped half mid-sentence. So what in God's name happened that the ship is still afloat and the crew itself has disappeared? And so we're talking about 20, 30, 40 people at a time, guys, not just these people who had small sailboats who got lost out there. And those were also found without them on board. So that's certainly a curious aspect when you talk about the disappearing factor that is encompassed with some of these triangles, man.
That's wild. Yeah, that's very mysterious. And there's not always answers. You know, there's just sometimes we're just left with the mystery, and we'll never know, and we'll never solve it. But God, is that a juicy story or what? I mean, that's juicy, and that's the kind of stuff we love because it makes you think, it makes you wonder, and no matter how old you are, a story like that hits you, and you just go say, "Wow, that's so cool, man."
I wouldn't doubt,
And
I wouldn't doubt that if some of these, ancient repositories that claim to have, Akashic records and so forth, where, there's the history of our world and everything that's happened here. People have talked about these discoveries already being made and that, certain people have these artifacts within their possession. Wouldn't it be amazing if some of those documentations actually mentioned some of these areas of interest and perhaps were saying, hey, listen, here's how you utilize these, or here's how you stay away from these, or here's another example of what you can do to at least make the awareness known that this is a real thing. I wouldn't doubt for a moment that there is some sort of ancient knowledge that goes along with this. And my thought with this is also, is this only for us, okay? Is this indigenous to our planet where we have these portals? And because we have so many circular celestial bodies out there with apparently similar environments, even at the moment or in the past, I would say that all of these celestial planets probably have something akin. So this is very curious, man, if we take it off planet.
It could be, if the discovery of that is true, that could spell, that could put NASA out of business for launching space missions to get from A to B. It would just be a natural way to teleport there, and then you don't have to go through all that. Just, reassemble your atoms, your molecules when you get there.
Yeah, well, according to
naturally. So yeah, if that works, I can't say it doesn't. I think theoretically it is possible.
Right.
Theoretically it's possible. I don't know of anyone who, and if anyone has done it, they're keeping, that knowledge to themselves for now. It may come out. You may see it come out someday.
Well, according to Captain Randy Kramer, he was always saying part of his story is that, he started on Earth, we were then shipped out to the moon, wherein we'd undergo some sort of process, and then boom, we went off to Mars, came back. So, he was talking about portals in way of getting to one place or another. Unfortunately, he hasn't responded insofar as, hey, I'm interested in what you've got going on. So I emailed him to, formally invite him on the show when I was talking to him. I haven't heard back from him. So I don't know if that is because I proposed that I wanted to know some of the connection between the technology they were using in Montauk versus what his story encompasses, or if it's something else entirely. But long story short, he's still out there, guys, talking and giving seminars. But that being said, if there are these inherent natural portals, and we could use something like that on what could be considered a dead planet or dead celestial body such as the moon, man, we would be light years ahead of where we are now in way of how we could travel and the other implications that come along with the knowledge of that. If it was
instantaneous like that, the faster you travel, the more of a dilation you have with the time effect, and it's hard for some people to get totally on board with time travel, and I understand that. It sounds just too far-fetched to say that you can take yourself out of the time period you're living in and visit another time period and then come back to where you were. I understand that. But if you look at it as, it's not just like something you see from science fiction where it's just you're sitting in a chair stationary, and then like George Pal, the Time Machine from H.G. Wells, and he moves in time, but he doesn't move in space. And everything changes around him. Walls are, brick walls are, like the one behind me goes up, and you just see the bricks go up, and you see he looks across, and all the fashions change, like he's going through, decades and decades of passing, and the lady, the mannequin's there, but her clothes keep changing and updating, and but what you really have to do if you want to travel through time is you have to leave Earth, because I remember Rich Giordano pointed this out, and I think this is a brilliant of why time travel, normal, Back to the Future, Doc and Marty style time travel isn't really feasible, because when let's say you take off and you leave this time, wherever you land is kind of blind. You could be slamming right into something, or the Earth may not even be there. That's what Rich said, because we're spinning in orbit. The orbit of the Earth around and the moon, it's like it wouldn't be in the same place in 1955 as it is right now. So you're not going to land on Earth. You're going to land on outer space, and you won't breathe. So what you really have to do is go to outer space first, and then time travel and then come back to Earth.
Work your way
That's
back.
how you do it, because the time-space continuum allows for that. Theoretically, it is possible. And when you accelerate to the point and then come back to Earth, it's not easy to get back to where you came from, because you're gonna have to accept the fact that everyone you know is probably dead, and it little depends on how far and how fast you went. But coming back, time will have progressed. You'll look the same. You'll look as young as you are when you left, but everyone else will be 80 years older and probably not around anymore. Maybe their grandkids are going to be there, who, might remember you if their parents said, "Hey, watch out for this guy. If he comes back, looks like this. He's a time traveler." And that's the only probably thing that can happen, unless they figure out how to extend life so that people can live that much longer. Maybe someone might still be around.
Well, we've talked about this in many various ways in the past here. Of course, Jay Marcus brings up Al Bailic's name, and I appreciate you doing that, because he's very close to me, as well as Duncan Cameron and Preston Nichols. If you're interested in what that relationship is, go back and check out some of the shows I did with Elisa Medhus and Michelle Gray, where we actually delved right on screen into some of that history of mine with these guys. But that being said, the problem with some of the Montauk survivors is that while their stories are absolutely fascinating, they're amazing, and in certain ways can be recounted in different analytics, if you will. Or
And very scary.
Well, they certainly are, because there is a sense of a doubt or uncertainty when they were put in these positions. Their memories were so fragmented, it's hard to find a linear interpretation of what they went through. So that doesn't necessarily mean I doubt what they went through. It's just a matter of recounting it in way of a timeline is very difficult. And of course, Al didn't make it any easier by talking about going far into the 2000s here. Was it 2300 some odd years ahead of time? And he's
that's hard to wrap your mind around. That stuff really gets crazy.
But the thing is, what they found out when they were doing the experiments with time travel, again, basically Preston was telling us, is that they came up empirically to all of those stone walls, wherein they didn't know what point in the past or future they were going to land. And of course, they said it was easier to go into the past for some reason than into the future. I don't know why, but they eventually figured that out. And there were many casualties as a result of just sending people blindly. And then, sure enough, they would be in a brick wall, or they'd manifest in some sort of construct. Look at what the Philadelphia experiment was purported to be in way of some of these guys coming back. But the reason for that is because you go into a 0-point space wherein the human essence, the way that we are right now in our vibration, we're locked into a 0-point. Let's say it that way. We're locked into a 0-point, and every single human being locks into the 0-point, which gives us that sort of internal clock of mortality and so forth. This gets thrown out of proportion when you go into this space. And when you're pulled back into physicality, of course, this wasn't done correctly in Philadelphia experiment and many experiments within Montauk Project until they got it right. You have the outcome of people either losing their mind because literally they are fractured. Okay, that's what happens. They're fractured. Or you get the physical anomaly of them, embedded into the molecules of material. Most times those people aren't alive when they come back. But, that being said, it's something we've witnessed on many different accounts. And if that's not the case, then why are we seeing it so consistently in these reports? These little details that say, oh, wait a minute, that's reminiscent of this. And, those, was, correlated in some way, shape, or fashion. They were connected. So, oh, that's curious,
Yeah. I don't know what to say about it, because I've heard it for years, and just it's such a horror story if that truly happened. I feel so bad for the guys who came back from that. And we solidified in that way. That is a horror show, and I hope it didn't happen for that reason. It's so bad that and I hear a lot of people doubt it, and it really isn't too much proof of it. Of course, they would hide the proof if an experiment went bad. They're not going to announce that. They're only going to announce it if it's a success, and even then, they're probably not going to announce it. So obviously, there's trial and error that goes into experiments, and like I said, people who are in the Navy, it's a tough job. They're tough sailors, and they took on that duty to serve their country in that way, and it's not that I don't feel bad. It's like, for the men that disappeared, I was saying, oh, what a wonderful, how cool. It's not cool for the families of these men if they really did vanish and never came back, or if they came back insane, they had to be hospitalized for the rest of their life. That's unfortunate. So it's not cool. But the science of it is, if you say that they were working on it, and it's possible. Okay, it took some trial and error, and some lives were lost in the process. But now we've stumbled upon this, and I think something happened with the Philadelphia experiment. I think it was real. I don't know if it's exactly like all the stories, but there's something funny happened on the Eldridge, and there's too much evidence that something weird happened, and there are too many personalities that are connected with science at that time who are claimed to be under Project Rainbow that sort of you would think would be the ones who they would ask to be on the team. And who we're talking about. We're talking about the big guys, the heavy hitters of science, Einstein and Nikola Tesla
and von Neumann.
Von Neumann. Is it von Neumann?
No, it's Neumann. You're right. It is Neumann.
So, right there. And probably everyone threw their 2 cents on it and was consulted. Edison, I'm sure. And, just what could be engineered. And competitors, and but we're talking, you have to do it. And they have, I don't know what they have, but I know the government has worked on it. There's just you can't say that we have proof that they definitely discovered it and they definitely did it. I don't know about that, but did they try? I think they did.
Of course they would.
I think there's proof that they did try.
I think there's proof they did try too. Look at all those machines that were pulled out of Camp Hero after the fact. I mean, immense generators and, all these different bits of equipment I'm not going to go into detail with right now. But long story short, these things were designed to carry an immense amount of power. And they had their own power station right there on the campgrounds. And they were utilizing other power stations within Montauk. They built specific power stations just for that. In fact, if you watch the Montauk Enigma documentary I put out in August, you'll see Peter Moon, myself, and Brian Minnick, driving past this large power grid, which was the cause for a power outage on the God, I can't remember what the event was, but essentially it was the biorhythm. It was on the biorhythm. What was it? The 40-year biorhythm.
It's funny you should say that, because I have right here a biofeedback monitor, a sensor. It's called the alpha wave sensor.
Oh, cool! I like that.
So that's psychic. That's a psychic hit, Michael. That right here.
Really, we're gonna have to play with that for fun a little bit later on here. Hey, look at that. It fits you perfect. Hey, before I forget,
operate
because
that with your brain,
I'm getting really into this. Of course, hey, Misty OC Drags, I think I missed a $1.99 super chat from you. Thank you so much. I did have it up on the screen. I don't know what the hell happened to it. Maybe I accidentally X'd out of it, but thank you so much. And in addition to that, we have Erin Morrison dropping a cool $10 on us here at Dark Hour Paranormal. Thank you so much. She says, because we love the show and you're all right too. I'll take that. I'll take that all day. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that support. And of course, all of you out there super chatting us tonight keeps the show going. And again, puts more time into my pockets, so to speak, so that I can continue working for you guys and going out and doing this and having, the guests on as we do. I thank you. I don't beg for it. I don't ask for it. I let you know it's there, and you guys come through with large hearts. So once again, I appreciate that. Listen, we're getting a little close here on time, but before we bounce out of here, there's one thing I wanted to point out, which some people may not be aware of, and that is the area that Barney and Betty and Barney Hill, I think it was abducted back in the 60s. That's actually at the northern tip of the Oceanic Triangle in New Hampshire. So they were within another triangle when this occurred. If you guys weren't familiar with that, as I wasn't until I started researching this a little bit deeper, that happened within one of these particular architectures that we're talking about. So again, another curious thing. But, as that being said here, Frapsap, Robert Rivas, let us know where we can find you. I'm going to include your link to the channel that you have on YouTube down in the description. I couldn't do it because I was away from my computer earlier, but I will do it as soon as the show's over. Guys, go and check out some of his cool videos. But go ahead, Give it to us in your words, my friend.
Yeah, that's me, Frapsap. It became me. I didn't start out as Frapsap. It was just a name for my channel, but I'm my channel. I'm Frapsap. So, but I'm Robert Rivas from the Frapsap channel. But it's okay to call me Frapsap, whatever.
It's how I knew you in the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's all lowercase, Frapsap, right here on YouTube. And I have a lot of old movies on there, a lot of East Side Kids movies, Leo Gorcey movies, and also Fang Face cartoons, a lot of fun stuff. My personal favorites from 1978. And I also have my own adventures on there. I've done some archaeological research and discoveries I've made in that, and explorations in South America. And I'm going to be uploading more from my old days doing paranormal investigations before, I'm doing anything these days. Some of my old stuff that I recorded, some interviews in the Lowell area that I did. So that's coming up. I'm going to upload it. I just got a new GL2 camera, and I'll be uploading some of my mini DV tapes onto an editing suite, and I'll be editing more stuff and putting more kind of cool UFO stuff, paranormal stuff out on my channel, which to date there's not that much. But there's a few things, there's a few cool discoveries and miraculous things. I've showed Dark Hour before and stuff like that. And there's going to be more coming up, and more collaborations with other channels, and more interactive stuff that you'll be seeing. So come on and join up with me, and keep your eyes peeled for it. It's coming.
Absolutely, and I definitely encourage you to go and check out some of our prior broadcasts here on Dark Hour Paranormal with Robert Rivas, as he's spoken in depth about his experiences out in the field, and of course, one of my favorite figures in this respect, Marduk. So go and check that out. He's got lots to say about it. His theories are fantastic, and again, his boots on the ground research is certainly bar none some of the best that we've seen, and of course it's why we keep him around. No, I'm kidding. We love you, Robert, and I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight, man. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely phenomenal, and of course, you know as well as I, we could probably go for another hour and a half, but that's okay. We'll make it another show. And I appreciate you being here, and of course I look forward to working with you on this documentary. We'll start putting some things together and talk behind the scenes a little bit in way of what we're going to do and how to spearhead that. But I've got some ideas. It sounds like you've been enthusiastic about it, so I think we'll be good in a way of meshing.
That's great.
So
We're
fantastic,
doing it.
man. All right,
Keep
stick
your eyes.
around.
Watch out, folks. It's coming. 2022 is going to be a big year. It's going to be an awesome year for the paranormal and for Dark Hour and myself and all the channels. We're all, all the ones. You got Alien Girl. You got John Reese, Alien Scientist. You got Alien Addict. You got Richard Giordano Goofon. You've got Truth Seekers. You've got Dark Hour Paranormal. You've got Black Lotus Productions. These are the shows. We all know each other. Everyone in the chat room. We all have fun. I'm sure I left out a few other ones, but you know who you are.
Hey, They're all
our friends. And
you know what it is. We got Third Phase of Moon. We got Apollo
Third Phase of
Stereo,
Moon.
We got Dr. J Radio
Dr.
Live
J.
sometimes, even Doc
That's
Skinner. You know what I mean? So we've got the all-star cast here, guys.
All across the board. That's great. That's what I do with my time. I watch all these shows. I love them, and the people are great, and they're friendly, and it's interactive. And Apollo Asteria, fantastic, awesome show.
She'll be on the show this coming month, I think. Yep.
Yeah. Great
us.
collaborations. I watch those, and it's great. You'll see me in the chat rooms, and we'll all be hanging out together.
You bet, man. Just as it's always been, it'll continue to be that way. And my thanks to you, brother, as it's my privilege to have you aboard. And of course, hang out. You know the drill. We will be back. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us tonight on this 7:30 show here on the Eastern Seaboard. I very much enjoyed talking about this topic. I've been looking forward to it all day. And, of course, if we're going to the Bridgewater Triangle and we have New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine close enough, we might even go in and investigate some of those places, too. So it may not be solely on the Bridgewater Triangle. There was one put out very recently, I'd say within the last 4 or 5 months. I can't remember exactly who it was that had put it out, but it is on YouTube. If you type in the Bridgewater Triangle, this is one of the first documentaries that come up, I believe, by the same name. Very well done. I have reached out to these people to see if they want to be a part of what we're doing. Still haven't heard back from them yet, but you know how it is, very difficult to catch some people on YouTube sometimes. So I do hope to hear back because they did a fantastic job. So if you guys want to check that out, please do so. In the meantime, it is now 9 o'clock, top of the hour here at Dark Hour Paranormal. We're going to be getting out of here for the evening, but where should you go next, you do ask? Well, I'll tell you this. Goofon's on right now. Go on over to Rich Giordano's channel, Goofon, and he has a fantastic 2-hour show ahead of you. And then, of course, I'm sure Third Phase of Moon will be dropping another fantastic video later on this evening. So if you're up for the red-eye drive, as they say, stick around. And, of course, you'll see it all. All right, guys, we're going to be back tomorrow night with Jared Murphy discussing quite a bit on archaeology, and he has a video that he sent me that we're going to be discussing as well. Again, still on the archaeology end of things. I can't wait. I did have to move that from yesterday into Friday, some technical difficulties that I couldn't overcome. So with that being said, I will see you all tomorrow evening, again at 11 o'clock p.m. We'll be going on our usual time here, the new time slot, and we'll be sticking with it. But again, I can't thank you guys enough. What the hell happened here? Oh, there we go. I'm going to share that. Hey, Brian McAllister. Ah, Home Alone. That's why that sounds familiar. Brian McAllister with a $5.27 super chat. Thank you very much, brother. I love the picture. I believe that's your dog. But thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for being here with us. And, of course, thank you to all my super chatters tonight. You guys really make a difference in the way of keeping the show going. And, of course, more importantly, thank you for your presence here during the lives. And I love seeing that you guys go through the archives. And thank you for leaving comments for me to respond to and or really enjoy down in the comments section below. Folks, thank you so much. My moderators, you guys are the best. I really appreciate each and every one of you, and thank you for spending your time here. I know many of you are very busy, especially you, Cashew, going and with so much on your shoulders, doing such a fantastic job as all my moderators are. Thank you so much, guys. Until tomorrow night, stay vigilant, stay skeptical, and use that critical thinking, will you? All right, good night, everyone. Ciao.